Hey there, everybody. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's stocks to watch for trading and investing. And let's see, football season starting back up again. I don't have a whole lot of time for the whole blog post, but I am going to go ahead and put the video out again this week for everyone. Mark Tech took a little bit of a hit. Markets took a little bit of a hit. Um, September typically a difficult month for the markets for equities, and but there's still a lot of good looking setups out there. There's still going to be good trading opportunities out there. Last week, biotech and small caps they took a little bit of a breather, but there's like I said, still a lot of good looking setups out there. So let's just hop right into the list of stocks to watch for next week. Disca, this is definitely Discovery Networks is definitely more of a swing or long-term hold consideration. Had a nice little pop, has pulled back and testing the 50-day as support. Stochastic starting to curl back up. I like this one right here in this area for a potential starter position. Liberty Media has been buying John Malone, pretty good chunk of shares of Disca. I do think that even though it's only got 27 million shares in the float, which is not a big float, I think it's an interesting swing uh, potential here, right in this area. If it actually were to pull back down into the $26 area, that could be a really nice entry area for a swing or long term hold. All right, IPDN got a little bit of a pop on Friday. This is a pretty small float, 1.7 million shares. I guess I should say not pretty small, but super tiny. Closed above the 200 day. Maybe look for a pullback to that 200 day to 350 area, red to green. Looking for a day trade. The issue here is that it's only traded 71,000 shares on Friday, so there's not a lot of liquidity, not a lot of volume there. Uh, you have to be careful with that one. If this thing does get some significant volume, maybe we're looking for a test up into the $4 area, and if we take out that trend line, that could get interesting. But IPDN worth keeping an eye on for a day trading opportunity with volume. NX reported earnings, big gap up, big break above. Looks like they gave good guidance. Uh, Broke above the 200 day. Now it's got the gap to fill on the daily, but I think the earnings, the guidance were so strong that what we could see is a pullback here to the 200 day around 1875 or so. See if that acts as support for a bounce. Maybe this puts in a flag pattern here. Definitely worth at least having on the radar. 29 million shares in the float, fairly small float. I'm thinking more of a swing on this. Pull back to the 200 day, see how it acts there. Maybe that provides an entry. Maybe a pull back into the $18 area. That would be a better swing area to get involved. Got some price support and then the top of the trend line that could act as support there in the $18 range. So worth keeping an eye on. NX, SHLO, another 14.6 million shares in the float, popped up into price resistance, pulled back. That also, I believe, was off of earnings. This has got 14.6 million shares in the float. It's breaking this longer term trend line. That's what I kind of find interesting about it. And then if it can take out this 1160, you got a potential flat top breakout. Now, where do we go? Potentially up to the $12 area where we are likely going to see some resistance. Um, Watching this one for a pullback into, say, the 950 area. See if that holds the support for a bounce. Maybe a little red to green action there. 950, 945, somewhere in that area. Worth having on the radar. SHLO. Galt, nice little flag pattern. Pulled right back to the 50-day moving average. Had about a 5-day run. And now this has been pulling back for a few days to the 50-day, which could act as support. You've also got some potential price support there at 5 and change. So as close to 5 as possible for a potential entry for a bounce. This could be a day trade, could be a swing trade, higher risk, but could be a swing trade because it's a biotech, I believe. specialty generic drug manufacturer, but worth keeping an eye on. Galt off of this 50-day, and like I said, an entry close to $5 could be an interesting spot. CLMT. Let's see, oil and gas. Now, we had a nice little pop, double bottom potentially here, right? $6. Stochastic starting to curl up. Nice little pop on Friday. So oil and gas refining. You know, Carter Worth was on Fast Money talking about how oil and energy names could be looking for some action. I kind of do respect Carter Worth's charting work, and I think this one is worth keeping an eye on. I mean, I think we have a pretty clearly defined area of support of about $6, right? So maybe this pulls back to, say, 655, 660 or so. Take it there. Looking for a break above the $7 holla, maybe break above the 200-day. I think we get up into the 8 and change range. You get it close to 6. You've got a really clearly defined stop just below. Let's call it 580 or so. Actually, let's see. Put your stop at around 550, 560, somewhere in that area, and then you're looking for maybe an $8 test, and that's a pretty good risk reward on CLMT. And I think there might have been some insider buying too, but let me look real quick. Yeah, so we had some insider buys on 9.6 and 9.4, executive vice president and CFO, about 26,000 shares. So at 636 and 657. So I like it in this 6 and change area. Worth keeping an eye on that one for a potential swing. SSKN, a small float, 4.8 million shares in the float. Pretty nice looking setup on the daily here. Got a big pop. I think that might have been off of earnings, consolidating, and now flirting with potentially a 3 test and roll. Let me back this out to the weekly. Potential flat top breakout in this area. You do have the 100-week just overhead, and then the 200-week right about $4, and that would be the target actually, somewhere in that area. Look for maybe this to pull back. Oops. That is the 3rd day of the move actually. Had a nice little washout here, touched the 20-day and bounced. Maybe what we look for is pull back into the 260, 269 area, somewhere in that area, see if it holds the support. Could be a swing, higher risk swing because of the small float, but it did trade 847,000 shares on Friday, pretty decent amount of volume. ARC, which has been on my list for the last couple of weeks, I missed the breakout. Started to pop on Friday above this little trend line, 295, basically holding as support. Took out the $3 holla. Maybe what we look for here is a pullback to 310, $3. Try and take an entry there, 305, somewhere in that area. I'm looking for some follow through on this one. It had a nice looking setup on the daily. I think they just reported earnings which were decent. Hold on, yeah. Consolidated growth of nearly 2% Q2, driven continuing strength of print sales. So I think ARC worth keeping an eye on for potential, maybe a little swing. That's kind of what I'm looking at on it, is a swing trade, but worth keeping an eye on that one. YEXT reported earnings, pulled back off of those earnings to price support and then bounced. I was looking for this to pull back to the 50-day, and I would like to wanted to get involved in it for a long-term hold on a pullback to the 50-day. Did not do so. Came back and tested this area of price support, and then now has bounced. And what are we doing? We're testing all-time highs. So stochastic starting to curl up. MACD histo looking like it might go positive. Worth keeping an eye on. YEXT for a takeout of all-time highs, but good looking setup there on YEXT. VLRS reported some metrics on last week, and this thing was consolidating just below the 200-day. Took the 200-day out on Friday. And we've got a gap to fill up to probably around 8.75, $9 or so on the daily. Let me see here real quick on the trend line. We could just to get back up to this trend line. That's in the $10 area, right? So kind of interesting there. Nine likely going to have some resistance, 8.95 somewhere in that area. But this one could be interesting for an entry as a swing because this is a big, thick stock, 635,000 shares in the float. Pull back to 750 could be an ideal entry for VLRS. CVRS, this is flirting with the $1 holla. It's got an interesting look. It's consolidating just below this longer term trend line. I think that there has been some insider buying here. Let me just make sure. Yeah, $1.02, 99 cents, 96 cents, 79 cents, 80 cents. It's some pretty decent buying in this area. So I like it. I like this for a potential swing. Insider buys about $1.30 as well. Let's see, that was 27,000 shares. So some insider buying in this area. Looks like they're kind of trying to keep it above $1. It gets below $1, 90 cents, 80 cents. Could be an interesting little lotto play. Worth keeping an eye on. CVRS. VHC, they got this ruling from Apple, from the Supreme Court. Now, the issue is that these guys need capital. I don't know when they're looking to maybe get that money, but it looks like a final decision on the amount that Apple has to pay these guys. Now, who knows with the court system, but it announced that, it got a big pop, it pulled back, it closed this gap, and now we're right back here at the 200-day. Like I said, they need to raise capital, but if they get that money from Apple, they're not going to need to raise any capital. So they did just replace a universal registration statement. So there is a shelf out there for them to do an offering. So you got to keep that in mind. But the fact that it's flirting with this 200-day and actually held up pretty good over Thursday and Friday in a not a great tape, could be interesting here. This one could be interesting for a little short-term, high-risk swing. Take out that 200-day with some authority. Maybe you get some follow-through, get a pop on BHC. HAIR has had insider buying. Hold on a second. No. Has had some insider buying. It has broken over this little trend line here. It's flagging just below the 50-day. 14.9 million shares in the float. They're getting some class action lawsuits because of the performance of the stock, blah, blah, blah. But I think it actually has kind of an interesting look here. Maybe close to $2, right? Maybe it's worth taking a little stab at this at around $2, $1.90. Pull back to the 20-day, see if it holds support. Could be a high risk swing. Doesn't, trades okay volume, 158,000 shares. Let me see where, I think this one might have had some insider buys. It did. 10% buyer bought 2 million shares at $1.50. So that must have been an offering, I think. And then you had two insiders that participated as well. The CEO at $1.50 and a director at $1.50. Director picked up 333,000 shares. CEO 66,000 shares. So, $1.50 probably even better, right, as an entry. But maybe we just get a pullback into the 20-day 190. Maybe you look at a starter swing and then $2 to 190 area, and then maybe consider adding some shares at $1.50 where the insiders are buying. So that's also a potential consideration on HAIR. High risk, recent IPO, but I kind of kind of like the way it's starting to look. CWH, Camping World. So I just, I think it was in Barron's, uh, talking about RVs. This thing has gotten pretty beaten up, missed a couple quarters. They just announced regular and special dividend. This is probably more of a long-term hold consideration. Hold on a second. All right, I had to settle the troops down. All right. I like CWH for more of a long-term hold or swing consideration. Potential double bottom formation here. Take out this trend line, reclaim the 50-day. This thing did have a nice. This is Marcus Lemonis. If you ever watched The Prophet, it's in an area where there's potential price support here. And I mean, it was $50 not too long ago, right? So, worth keeping an eye on this one for a break back above the 50-day. I still don't like the slope of the 50-day, but this Barron's article talking about the RVs could be a positive for the stock. Worth keeping an eye on that one. Katos, I got to tell you, I screwed up on Katos. I had a bad sell. I was in this. The big short report came out from Spruce Point Capital. And but the insider buys remain consistent, and I got to tell you, if you back this thing out onto the week, first of all, it looks to me like we've got a reverse head and shoulders pattern here, right? We've got a reverse head and shoulders pattern. We're like basically at the neckline. You bake this out to the weekly time frame. This is a pretty big area that it's coming up into. Now I'm hoping that this acts as pretty good resistance and it pulls back. I'd like to see it pull back into. I'd love to see it pull back to about 1150, but may not happen. Maybe it just pulls back to the 50-day. They just announced one of the largest contracts they've ever announced, but it's a multiple year contract. But Katos is looking pretty darn good. And if it breaks over this $15, it's at all-time highs. And the shorts already seem to want to target this thing. If this thing starts to break out 15, and the shorts have been stubborn and been holding on to this, it could create a squeeze. So it's only got 87.8 million shares in the float. I mean, it's a fairly small float. So liking the look of Katos, would like to get back in it, would love it back somewhere around 1150 or $11. Don't know if I'm going to get that opportunity. So worth keeping an eye on Katos, more of a swing, long-term hold play. ATVI, listen, I wanted to get ATVI lower. I was hoping for down here in the $68 area. I might have to just start a position. You're coming up into the holiday season. These guys have got Call of Duty. They've got some other games that are coming out. I think these guys are gonna rock it. It's a good long-term hold consideration. Even if the market does pull back, this would be a name that I would be more than happy to add to my position. So maybe I just take a small starter here in this area, and then look to add if the market were to break down and we were to get a pullback into the $60 or $57 area, I would be looking to add to that position for a long-term hold. MEET, full disclosure, I took some in the chat room on Friday. I took it at 509 or 507, somewhere right here in this area. I just like the way it's consolidating. It appears to be holding on to the 8 EMA. It's above the 50-day. Social media stocks have been getting hit. This one actually held up fairly well. I think this one is kind of interesting, and I just took a little starter in it. Pulls back to 475, 430, 440. I would be looking to potentially add to my position in MEET. INFU, it's consolidating here just below the 50-day. Trades really thin. Let's see, traded 17,000 shares on Friday. Looking for some volume on a break over 335. maybe get a nice little scalp opportunity. More of a day trade opportunity in my mind on Infu if it gets some volume. Box is at an interesting area, sitting right on top of the 200-day. Pierced it last week, and then reclaimed it. Looking for it to break back above the 50-day, and maybe go back up and test that 2880 area. GLW consolidating, more of a long-term hold consideration. Really tight candles as it consolidates right here at the 20-day. Would love it as a gap fill, pull back to $30 to the 200-day. Not sure that opportunity happens. Maybe on a pullback to say $32. See if that happens. That could be an interesting spot to take it. Like I said, long-term hold play on GLW. ATRS, great looking setup on the daily. This is the generic EpiPen player. It's been consolidating. It did break below the 20-day, in the $3 area, $2.97, $3 area. I think this is maybe a compelling swing opportunity on ATRS. And then if we get a break over this trend line with volume, could be a day trading opportunity. BIOL, I think this might have been on last week's list, but it's consolidating right here at the 200-day. Not a lot of volume, only 26,000 shares. Looking for it to take out this 200-day with some authority, with some volume, and could be a nice day trading opportunity. And let's see, there has been some insider buying from $1.37 to $1.67 recently here. So this one is getting some insider buying. I think they have a new CEO. The executive vice president and CFO bought 25,000 shares at $1.67. And it looks like you had a director that picked up some shares at $1.31. So there's some insider buying there, flirting with the 200-day, flirting with the long-term trend line. Recent reverse split, super tiny float, worth keeping an eye on. AVP, another one that had the insider buys that I've been watching as it consolidates. Pull back to 185. Maybe that is the spot to get involved. But I like the look of AVP. More of a swing on AVP because it's a pretty thick stock. AMRN, looking for a pullback into the $3 range. See if that holds the support. You got some potential price support there above the 50-day. That could be a higher risk swing because it's a biotech. Could be a day trading opportunity if you take out 330 with volume. And GNC, so I just got done reading, apparently it was a person that had shorted this from much higher prices, now saying that the risk reward element to be or remain short is significantly diminished. And I don't know that will give this, they're not exactly saying that this is a scream and buy fire sale price at the current price, but they're saying that the risk reward for the shorts is not as compelling as it was when it was $15 a share, or even $7 a share. I mean, now this thing is piercing the lower Bollinger Band. It is testing all-time high lows. Maybe you get one more flush completely out of the lower Bollinger Band, and you look for a snapback play. I would maybe look for a snapback play, and then if I can lock some, I might hold some for a lottery, because they're looking right now, I guess, at a potential merger with a Chinese company, and that's one of the things that would help them significantly in terms of their debt. So it's an interesting play. Their retail brick and mortar stores have been declining, but they haven't been declining fast enough to suggest that they're going to go out of business. So, what's the risk reward? Look at Vitamin Shops. When that thing bottomed, that thing's turned around and skyrocketed. I think we could see the same type of thing in GNC, especially if the preferred share deal goes through that they're currently working on. I may not find that out for the next couple of months, but it is anticipated to close before the end of the year, and that could give it a nice little boost. So we'll have to see how it plays out. High risk, but definitely worth maybe keeping an eye on for, like I said, maybe you get another flush, another candle completely out of the lower Bollinger Band, and then you get a little snapback play action in GNC. And then if you are so inclined to hold on to some shares and see if maybe you get some follow through on a positive catalyst, I think it's worth definitely keeping an eye on. Let me just check real quick and see what the short interest is on GNC. All right, so you got 32% short interest in GNC. That's a pretty significant amount of short interest. So, and it doesn't have a big float. I mean, it's 74 million shares in the float. It's not a big, huge float. So, 32% of the float is short. So, I think this one's worth keeping an eye on. All right, that's it. That is my list of stocks to watch for the week. Good luck trading next week. Keep your eyes peeled. I likely am going to make a announcement pretty soon about Alpha Wolf Trading and the blog, and I might be doing that in the next week or so. So keep your eyes peeled. Right now, not accepting any new members at all whatsoever. So that's the deal. All right, I'll talk to y'all later this week, and good luck trading. And that's it.